Welcome all to our show, Talk on Point. My name is Oscar Maisiri. Continuing with the series, Before You Say I Do. Some of us might be aware that a few weeks ago we had the first series where we spoke about dating and preparing for marriage. But today we are making things a bit more practical because we are having couples who have gone through the Preparing for Marriage course with Ken and Patty Boggett, who are here to share with us their stories with regards how they benefited from this most valuable course. So without further ado, allow me to welcome Ken and Patty Boggett just to give us an introduction of what we are going to be talking about today. Over to you, Ken and Patty.
Thanks, Oscar. We're Ken and Patty Borgert, working with Family Life, and we always love to talk about the subject of preparing for marriage. That's our passion. We'll share this brief introduction now, but because we don't want to take time because we're eager to hear from the other couples that are with us and hear their stories. I'm just going to briefly cover, Oscar, what we cover in the material, and it comes from a biblical perspective, a Christian perspective. So we have 6 sessions. We talk about God's purpose for marriage. We talk about God's plan for marriage, which is leaving, cleaving, becoming one flesh. We look at communication and resolving conflict. Then we look at roles, fulfilling our roles and responsibilities. We next look at finances, and then we look at sexual intimacy. Each session has a project that goes with it for the couple to interact together over the content of each session. And then throughout the whole course, there's also 2 worksheets to talk about personal history and about expectations. And again, the idea is to get the couples to talk together and interact on those subjects. Then just lastly, Oscar, there's a session in there that's kind of optional. It's for the couples that aren't sure if they should get engaged, they have questions, or they're engaged and are not sure if they should go on to getting married. And so that gives them some guidelines and some discussion points to help answer that question. And that's what we cover, Oscar.
When Ken and I went through our marriage preparation about 35 years ago, our mentor couple said the purpose of it was to minimize the surprises in marriage. You can never fully prepare, but to help gain tools. And what we look for is couples to be proactive in making their marriages the best that they can be. Marriage is tough, and everyone who's been married for any length of time knows that. And what happens is we invest so much time, so much money in our occupations that maybe we're only going to have, if we're lucky, 35 or 40 years. But we invest almost nothing in the relationship that we're going to be in for the rest of our lives, even after retirement. And that relationship usually is a whole lot more demanding than our jobs are. So the value of the marriage preparation is, as Ken said, to help couples talk about subjects that maybe they wouldn't ordinarily talk about, and to gain skills in order to help them navigate just the complexity of marriage. And we have our own program, but we just want people to be involved in some kind of preparation. It doesn't have to be our program. It's whether they're a pastor, there's a counselor, someone that can go through some of the same material with them so they can be better equipped for their marriages. So we've had fun with the couples that are here today, and we're looking forward to hearing what they have to share with us.
They just can't talk about us.
Thank you so much, Ken and Patty, for sharing what the Preparing for Marriage at Family Life offers covers, but also to just say that I appreciate you highlighting that you are not just calling people to attend these courses that you offer, but wherever they are, they are pastors, they are leaders, Christian leaders who give Preparing for Marriage. We value Preparing for Marriage so much that we want to encourage you, wherever you are, to, before you say I do, to get into some kind of Preparing for Marriage course. And once more, before I introduce our guest couples, our special couples today, I would like to let you know, our viewers, that there will be time for questions. So if you have questions here on the platform, just send your questions through the chat box. If you are watching on Facebook, on Talk on Point, I'll be checking if you are posting the questions there, and then we'll be able to answer those questions. Let's move on now. I would like to start by introducing our first guest couple who will be getting married on the 12th of December 2020. And this is Becca Majane and Lisedi Masisi. These two lovely couple met at a university Bible fellowship meeting and have known each other for almost, or should I say, for over 5 years. And they've dated for almost 8 months now. Becca is a medical sales representative and Lisedi is a lecturer at Wits University. So welcome to you, Becca and Lisedi. Where are you? I can't see them now.
We're here.
Yeah.
Oh, good, good. Welcome. Our second, good. Our second couple is Shauke and Tamlin Shekman. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing this correctly. I'm trying. They've been married since March 2020, and they met through an online dating site and knew each other for 5.5 years before getting married. Shauke is an engineering lecturer at Wits, and Tamlin is an audit manager. Welcome to you, Shauke and Tamlin. And our last guest couple is Nto and Tumi, who will be getting married in November.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
They've
hope.
known each other for about 5 years, and they met at a church conference in Soweto in September 2015. Mto is an asset manager in the government, and Tumi is an audit trainee at Deloitte. Welcome to you too.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Now, you might be wondering why I had to go to these great lengths to explain, about these people. But I just wanted to show you that in spite of the different backgrounds that these people have and their standing, whatever social standing, there's one thing that they have in common. They valued preparing for marriage to an extent that they decided before we get married, like for Shauke and Tamlin, who are already married, let's do this course. And for these other two couples, they all said, you know what, before we get married, let's do this course. But I would like to hear from you, couples, starting with Becca and Lisedi. You hear people say that we love each other so much, and love is enough. Love covers everything. And we don't see any reason why we should attend a preparing for marriage course, because love will just help us through whatever we're going to encounter in our life as a couple. What would you say made you decide attend preparing for marriage course, and also what can you say to convince people who say that they don't want to attend a preparing for marriage course because they love each other?
All right. So I have met a couple of guys who are married. I even have a friend who is divorced. And it appears that the issues they are battling with were issues that needed to have been addressed before they got married. So those things made me realize that falling in love and having those love feelings and so on, it's all good, but at the end of the day, we have these different backgrounds which come into play, and you cannot just change a background after making a vow into marriage, because you are part of your history, you are part of the background you're coming from. So, and those differences come into play into marriage, and different expectations and so on. So I think from hearing those couples who had been married and one of them who divorced, I think they could have better prepared themselves had they gone to a premarital counseling. So I think from then on, I got convinced that it's necessary, it's a must that I really go through a premarital counseling process.
Yeah, and I think we just generally didn't know what we were doing. So we kind of needed direction with regards to what it means to coexist with someone. And I was just telling him that from my side, it was also encouraged by my sister who was previously married. And she said to me that the one time they went to counseling after they got married. And she was surprised to find out that they actually defined trust and loyalty very differently. And she said, had we actually had these counseling sessions before, I would have kind of understood his thought process and he would have understood mine. So she encouraged it. And when we talked about it, we're like, yeah, it's something that we should definitely do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Becca and Liseri, for sharing that. You've actually highlighted that there is so much a couple might not be aware of, that a couple who is experienced in the issue of preparing for marriage should be able to help them see. Thank you so much for that. I'll move over to the married couple, Shauke and Tamlin.
I think for me, it's a case of anyone that's saying that they want to get married or they're in a relationship, you want to invest the most you can into your relationship. You know, why take the risk of having any kind of risks? Rather, you know, you've got nothing to lose. If it doesn't, you know, if it's not something that you think actually ends up working for you at the end, it's not like it destroys your relationship. It's not like it ends it. It's certainly not a waste of time, because it's very thoughtful discussions and things that you, at the very least, makes you think of things in different ways. And it's so much more than that. I mean, it's not just that, don't get me wrong. But my point is, if I'm talking to anyone, why not? What you got to lose?
And I think we were aware of the possibility that something can go wrong.
Yeah.
We are aware of our own flaws. So, you know, we got the opportunity. Our minister, he recommended that we do the course. And we got the opportunity, and if we got something or get tools to improve our relationship, we took it. And why not take it? Like I say, we've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Wow, you know, I like what Tamlin has said, that we're aware of, you know, that something could go wrong, which means you sought information. You know, we say prevention is better than cure. There are a lot of people who wait for problems to happen and they start seeking counseling. Or when you invite people to something like this, they will say, you know, we don't have a problem. Why should we do it? But what you are saying, you know what, we wanted to invest in our marriage. You wanted, and I like what Shauke say, that, you know, you don't lose anything, you know. You're actually benefiting, you know, benefit by taking time to get help from experienced people like Ken and Boggett, you know, like pastors out there who are experiencing these issues. So thank you for highlighting that. Mtoa and Tumi, over to you.
Yeah, so for us, yeah, it was mostly wanting to have almost like a guided conversation. We had like conversations, but wanted like a guided conversation with a couple that's more experienced with marriage, that had already walked the path that we are about to work or walk on.
Yeah. And I guess also, you know, when you're in love, you are in this bubble where you are having critical conversations, but, you know, there's blind spots. And I think for me, it was, what are the questions that I'm not asking, or my community is not asking, that we need to have, or the conversations that we need to have, that the community around me is not having. So, yeah.
So you said you wanted some form of guided conversation. So looking at the time that you, rather the way that you related you two before the preparing for marriage and now, can you say that there are things that you couldn't openly talk about that now you freely discuss as a couple because of the preparing for marriage?
Well, so I think like when I spoke a lot, I would talk about like events. So I would relate events to her, but I think what this course has taught me is like that I need to also speak about how I felt. So if something happened, also talk about how it made me feel, and not just say this is what happened. And so I think it's taught me to be more, to speak more about my feelings, but also in communicating, it's taught me how to speak from an I, not from like, you did this. So I'll be more like, oh, this is how I felt, okay? So I think that's what it helped me with.
I would ask the same question to Lisedi as well. I mean, Becca and Lisedi, are there things that you couldn't talk openly before the preparing for marriage course that you are now freely talking about as a couple, or something like that?
Yeah, I think that's what he has touched on. Unto has touched on that concept of talking from the I, and also expressing my feelings. I think was something that I always shied upon from. But the big one I would say is vulnerability. What I learned from the course is the importance of just being vulnerable, and because that's the feelings part. Because we men, we always think if I don't express my feelings, it means manly or strength. But now expressing my feelings is always, for me, a form of weakness. So I always need to be strong and not show if I'm scared or something is troubling me or something like that. So I think that was one of the major ones, just to be vulnerable in a relationship, and that way, she can also relate with me better.
Yeah. And I think because we met in a unconventional way, if I can put it that way, because we met through church and the guidance of the leadership at church. It was almost like you don't, because normally when you meet someone, you are quite frank in your conversations. You can talk about just about anything. But I think we weren't really 100% sure where to take it from there. And I think we were more spiritual than handling the human parts that also matter, I think, and build. So I think with Mto saying a guided conversation, I think that's what we actually got from the courses, because it allowed us to talk about other things that affect marriages that sometimes I think as Christians you don't necessarily want to tap into, or you don't necessarily entertain because you don't know how, or you don't know if it's the time yet. So I think that guidance allowed us to have an all-round type of conversation about everything that we should expect or could expect for marriage.
Thank you, Becca and Lisedi. And Shauke and Tamlin, any major adjustments from the way you used to do things as an individual, not to how you do things as a couple?
I think for us, it's more of a case of we're relatively good with being able to communicate with one another about things, or that there wasn't anything we couldn't talk about, but it's how we approached a conversation that we were not very good at in a number of ways, which would either get the other person's back up, or you'd have an overly immediate negative response to it, which just results in you're not going to be able to take this conversation very far.
I think we learned how to resolve conflict a lot better.
Because of that.
Because of the manner we used to approach and how we approach it now.
I think that was just about the perspective, about seeing how the other person. It's about seeing, right, that your perspective is your way that you want to be able to talk, and what you're comfortable with in communicating the other person. Understand that they're not the same, that they want to communicate in a different way, or that there's other things they expect or need from this conversation.
Yeah, we learned that we're very different. Well, we are different.
Yeah.
And therefore we're going to approach it differently.
Embrace it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your communication, the way you communicate with each other was even good before that. And then you went on to talk about being equipped to resolve conflict. I think in a loving, should I say, in my own ways, in a loving manner. Other than that, are there any other takeaways from the Preparing for Marriage conference? I mean, course for you? Those aha moments, something that, it's like there was a light as you're going through the course.
For me, it was a case of that Tamlin sort of said it was very much that we are different. that what I need out of a relationship and what she needs out of a relationship is different. And that's not something I'd ever thought about. I think also the case of the sort of significance of marriage.
Yeah, it's not just a contract.
Yeah.
You know, doing this course made us realize that it's so much more. You know, it's God.
Yeah.
Know,
and certainly the way that it's portrayed in, say, media or general things, say, on TV or something like that, it gives a false impression of what it's like, or what it means, where it's a contract and you can just cancel the contract and you're out of it and go and look for another contract somewhere else. It doesn't work that way. And not that we were going to approach it that particular way, but it gives them more significance to the entire feel for all of it.
Excellent, excellent. And the other couples, any aha moments, some that say, like, this was a major takeaway from this preparing for marriage course. I will start with him talking to me.
Oh, okay. So I think for me, it was the expectations lesson, because I think I had expectations that I didn't even know I had about the everyday life. Like, like, oh, he'd understand if I'm coming back from work and I'm tired, we're both tired, someone must cook, it's not me, things like that. And it's just like, you have expectations that you don't even know, or like, do you expect children in the next year? Do you know, things like that. So I think that for me was a great lesson to say, expectations need to be communicated, and it's a constant communication. So like, there's expectations in everything, like whether it's going to the shop, or it's like, oh, I expected that you'd come back with milk. And he's like, I didn't know you needed it. So things like that. So for me, expectations was a really good lesson and good take home.
Yeah, so I think for me, an awareness that I'm called to serve. I think I've heard this, but it becomes more of a reality just as time passes. Like, even as I relate with her, I think my first instinct would be to like put myself first, but now I think I'm just like, I think about, oh, okay, so how can I sort of put her needs above my own, and how can I serve in whatever situation we find ourselves in. It's almost like even as you lead, you're not like hell bent on getting your way. You just like really consider it and like trying to understand where she's at and what her needs, or even what her wants are.
Thank you. As Tumi was talking, I was just thinking to myself that a lot of times we take things for granted, and it's a simple thing like expectations, was an aha moment for you. But most of the time we just expect someone is getting into marriage, maybe as a lady, there are a lot of things that they're expected to do in our culture, or as a man, a lot of things that we just assume that the couple knows about those things. And it's good that you mentioned that, and I'm sure it's an encouragement for those who are still to say we do to attend this conference, this course. Becca and Lisedi, any aha moments for you as well from the course?
I think I share the same sentiments with Dumi, because there's so many the way I expected him to lead, the way I expect him to carry out certain tasks, like with my pace, sort of. So I think it was when we were doing the finances, it was also that the aim is not to try and change the other person from what they are, but kind of find a way of letting him be him and me be myself as well. And I think the other aha moment was, I never actually thought that I operate on a 50-50 basis when it comes to relationship. But I think through the course, I realized actually that I do operate on a 50-50 more than I had imagined, because there's certain things that I just expected him to do. And if he doesn't do it, then it also kind of dictates whether I do my part as well. So I think that has been the biggest aha moment as well for me during the course.
Right, on my side, it has been, I think, a couple of things, but maybe I'll just mention two. And one of them is we always hear that a man is the head and so on. And I think movies and the way our families are brought up, it paints a certain picture of that kind of leadership. And usually it's sort of almost dictatorial leadership. But it was hard to realize actually it's more of a servanthood leadership. And it's not bossy, so it's not that leadership where I can command. It's more of, let's say there's a conflict. How do I create peace? Which is very difficult actually if a man is the lead, because then it's now sort of up to me to create an environment where we can pray, an environment where there's peace in the home. And of course, it will require again for me to be vulnerable. If I'm the one who caused it, I'm the one who have to now apologize, or so that was one. And that with that, it means marriage now is something that God is using, to evangelize. It's like I realize actually it captures the gospel, because the two parties, I have to surrender my life, or I have to literally, lay down my life in a way to be able to serve in the way that I'm realizing marriage demands as a man in Christ. Then, the other one was this point that I keep raising of being vulnerable, that I've realized actually the strength of the marriage, I think really it lies on vulnerability, both of us being vulnerable, sharing our weaknesses and struggles. So I think those were some of the big things that I learned through the course. And,
I like the fact that you're talking about vulnerability, and I think what this course does is it makes you realize that you can be vulnerable and safe at the same time, because you are not only taught how to express yourself, but the spouse is also taught how to receive you when you make yourself vulnerable to them, which is a good thing. And I also just like to stress the issue of, I think you, Becca, and To mentioned the issue of servanthood, which is something that is not very common in our culture as a man, to be there to be servants to your wife, which is a good thing. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, as we come to an end of our time, I would like to, before I ask maybe the last question, I would like to ask our participants if you have got any questions. Is there anyone who's got a question? I'm checking on Facebook here. There are no questions as such. So our participants here on the platform, I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions. If you don't want to type, you can actually just raise your hand and I'll be able to see you. But as we do that, I would like to go back to the couples and just ask them the last question about this course. Is it something that you would recommend to others who are considering marriage, and why? And also at the same time, just maybe mention one skill that about the relationship that this course taught you. So is it something that you would recommend, or just a similar course like this, and why? And just maybe one skill that you about your relationship that this course taught you. We have spoken, I think most of you have spoken about conflict resolution, but if there's something that you want to add, you can just add. I can start with you, Becca and Lesedi.
On my part, I think I would say a skill that I've picked, it's to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable and just whatever weakness I have, to really share that. And also the other one is in terms of communication. When we communicate, instead of let's say she has done something that I didn't like, instead of being judgmental, I should come off with how what she's doing is making me feel. Instead of, I think Nto also mentioned it at some point. So I think those are the two things that really, in terms of skills, in terms of relationships, would be a big takeaway, how I relate with Becca.
And I think for me, the biggest one also has to be communication, because I'm a very direct person. So that can sometimes come across as a little insensitive. So I think just maybe choosing a different way to structure my words, and also, yes, expressing myself when maybe he's done something that I don't appreciate has helped. And also just maybe also picking up on him wanting to talk about something but not saying it directly. I think it has made me much more aware that maybe he's not communicating directly, that he wants to say that I hurt him somehow, but then it also emotionally prepares me as well to expect that that conversation is going to happen, and create a platform for him to be able to tell me about whatever I might have said or did that was displeasing to him. So I think it has made me much more aware of what I say, and also what he may not be saying, so that I allow him the platform to say it then later on.
Thank you for that. And just to encourage people there about the issue of vulnerability, as Becca is saying, vulnerability actually makes you strong, and it makes you being a real person, because you're not pretending to be what you are not. And at the end of it, you will be healthy, and your marriage will be healthy, because your partner knows you exactly for who you are. So well done on that. And let me quickly move on to the next couple. I would go to Tamlin and Shalke. Would you recommend?
Well, I mean, firstly,
Of course.
we would definitely recommend to anyone that's considering marriage or deep into their relationship, definitely, it's, as I said from the beginning, it's why not? You've got nothing to lose.
No, well, one of the skills that I think that I took away was, by learning what Shaka needs as a man, I've learned to communicate better to him, because I can be a bit of a harsh person, or a very direct person, and sometimes I think that can come across that I don't respect you, and I've learned to maybe think before I say certain things.
Yes. I think for me, over and above the conflict resolution, which is, I think, probably our biggest skill, that's helped the greatest, it's also just learning our place in the relationship, and what we are there to do for each other, and relying on that. It's almost an inherent trust in one another, in terms of, this is what this person is there for me for, in this covenant together, that this is what your role is in my life, and trusting in that, which is not always the easiest thing to do, to sort of say, okay, I don't need to do anything here, because this is what you're going to now be here for me.
Thank you, Shauke and Tamlin. Why not do the preparing for marriage? I like that statement. Why not? You don't lose anything. You actually benefit. You need information, and if you are not married, it's a new thing that you're venturing into. So you need information. This information, you can get it from experts like Ken and Pat Boggett and many other people out there. Mto and to me.
Hey, I would definitely recommend it. Yeah, well, because I think every relationship could use a bit of introspection and some perspective. Yeah, just from a third party, that you don't even know. Like, yeah, I remember like suggesting to Dumi that, like, what if we did this with our parents? And she was like, you're not going to be completely honest with my parents, so rather not. So I definitely recommend it to other people.
Yeah. Definitely. Like Nto said, I guess there's, you don't lose anything from, really finding out what this relationship is about, and like introspection of a relationship. And I think it's an investment. I don't know if it's Patty who spoke about investment in the beginning of this. It's just a small investment you are putting into your marriage to just clear out some things before you before you go into the covenant. I mean, you can't get out of covenant, so you may as well be as prepared as you can before you get in, which I think is a good thing. Some of the skills that we've learned. Definitely communication. I think I'm good at communication, but it taught me to be better. So it took me to be a little bit better at communication. And the I statement, that was good. So those skills of just like how to communicate things. I think this course brought a lot of, brought up a lot of conflict, which was good because it made us deal with things that we didn't even think we needed to deal with, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, To and Tumi. From hearing you, all three couples, preparing for marriage is something that is worth investing in. You actually reminded me of a passage of scripture that talks about who of you can start building without counting the cost. Before you do something, you need to count the cost. And basically what it means is you have to sit down and figure out, okay, this is how this project is going to be done. This is how it's going to cost, all these other issues, the logistics part of it. So the same with marriage. You cannot just decide to get married today and tomorrow you're married. But you have to realize that, okay, I'm going to get married to Tumi. Tumi is different from me, but I need to be a servant to her. I need to know her. I need to know how to meet her needs. So what do? I need information. And from what you are saying, you got information, the information that has prepared you to get married on the 12th, rather to start your journey from the 12th of, did you say 12th? November, eh? Are you getting married in November or December? Okay, I can't hear you anyway. But it cannot be overemphasized that you definitely need to do a preparing for marriage course, such as what these couples have been sharing their stories to us have gone through. And the good thing, especially during our time here, you've got technology. You don't have to travel to many kilometers away to attend a preparing for marriage. You can connect with your pastor, with your whatever mentors through this, through something like Zoom or Skype or whatever. Then you go through a course like this. So then you know that by the time you are ready to tie the knot, you are definitely sure that you're making the right decision. So, who wants to go? Do you want to say something, Ken Perry?
No, I could comment on everything that they've been saying, and then, but that we're out of the time. It's been fun to be with you, Oscar, and fun to be with the other couples. I don't know that it came out, but they've gone through the sessions with us, and it was just a lot of fun to be with them and to interact with them. And I'm glad that they benefited, and it encourages me to see how they're doing and how I believe they're going to be doing in their marriage. So thanks, Oscar. And you guys, thanks for for joining us, being a part of this.
Yeah, thank you very much.
God bless you all, and all the best.